أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله القاسم الجبارين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمخلوقين سيدنا ونبينا وشفينا أبو القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائي وتسليما لأمري. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. So, this is our fourth session this Muharram, or my fourth session. And we have chosen to look at the Shias who are not Isna Asharis. So what has been their history and how they fit into the pattern of the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam and Ahlul Bayt, and what their contribution has been and could be. We have chosen this because, as I said in the first session, this is a little understood area of Muslim history as far as, especially for us, because over the last 500 years, just over 500 years, since the establishment of the Safavid state in Iran, we have by default associated Shiism with Iran. So we have forgotten everybody else outside. But this is only 500 years out of nearly 1,500 years. So for 1,000 years, Shias of one kind or another existed in all over the world, in different places, and had different histories and origins. So, little bit, I don't know what I call it, foolishly, I chose this subject not realizing how much work is involved in putting together the 4 sessions and how much digging one has to do and how much understanding one has to do, because lots of things which one comes across are quite new. Some of them are contradicting what we know, and some of them are really amazing. We've seen some of them in the last 3 sessions, and we will see some more today. And I'm sure that today, inshallah, most of us will be surprised at what I have to say, if not all. So, the first thing is that all the origin of the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam altogether and their subsequent activities really date after the events of Karbala. You see, the massacre of Karbala defines a very, very, if you like, depressing moment in the history for the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. If you imagine most of the immediate family, including young men and children, have been massacred. The women and the surviving others have been taken prisoners and paraded through all over the place. And everybody else is forbidden to talk about this through repression, because the Umayyad state wants to overcome this legacy, okay? Wants to wipe out this legacy, because their prosperity now clearly depends on that. You see, at the time of the death of Muawiyah, Yazid had two challenges, effectively. One was the presence of two strands of people who were close to the Prophet that time in Medina. One was, of course, Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his family. And the other one was Abdullah ibn Zubair. These were the two people with lesser or greater legitimacy who could mount a challenge to Yazid's claim to be caliph. Of course, Imam Hussein had a greater claim because he had a direct lineage from Imam Ali alayhi salam, and Imam Hassan also was before him. But you see, some people would prefer this and that, and both needed to be eliminated. So clearly identifying this as a greater challenge, Yazid chose to attack Imam Hussein or force him into submission. And if not, then obviously we know what happened in Karbala. So post that, we saw we had a number of different kinds of approaches. Some of the followers, they said, well, as I said, some of them said we should repent. These were the Tawabin. Some of them said, no, we cannot keep quiet, we should fight. And so we had people like Mukhtar Sakafi and others who wanted active. Or Zayd ibn Zain al-Abidin, also we saw he wanted active engagement in politics and taking over. Others decided that perhaps the time was not right and maybe there was a need for some kind of a quiet period to rebuild your followers and so on. This was the strategy of Imam Zain al-Abidin and so on. And then one of the outcomes of Karbala, of course, was the eventual fall of the Umayyad dynasty. Because although militarily they were victorious, but legitimacy-wise it dealt them such a blow that they were gone. And that opportunity, that sort of gap, if you like, was taken advantage by the Abbasids, again claiming their legitimacy from the family of the Prophet. And then once they came to power, they started to backtrack and do all kinds of things, so that by the time of the 5th and 6th Imam, the repression was so bad that it was quite possible for people to argue that so-and-so has gone into hiding because there was fear that he would be killed. Exactly like if we see the time of Firaun when Musa alayhi salam was there, he was aware and he was saying any child must be killed. Little aware that his own wife had taken this child from the river and, nurtured it. Of course, that is Allah's will. But you see the climate. And similarly, in that time, this was the climate. In fact, we know from history that people like Imam Musa Kazim alayhi salam spent most of their life in prison. So why should that be so in an Abbasid time? Is itself revealing. So in this period, there were lots of developments from different kinds of followers, taking different positions and sides, right? And what we want to look at today, well, day before yesterday, we looked at the Zaydis who were branched out from the time of the 4th Imam. Then the day before, we looked at the Alawis and the Alawites and all that group, which were originating in a different kind of milieu. But today we want to look at what are called Fatimis, or sometimes called Ismailis, and we will see why they are called so. Fatimis, obviously, because they claim the leaders, their Dais or the Mahdis or whatever, which we will see, claim descent from both Imam Ali alayhi salam and Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. So they are specific to the line of Fatima. That's why they call it Fatimis. Now, in terms of today, we have most of the Ismailis, whether they are Al-Khani or Bohras and some other small groups, they are largely at the moment in India and Yemen. And then people like us who have originated from India and gone to all over the world. So both, I mean, the Bohras, the Snasheris, the Al-Khanis from East Africa have gone here and there. So, but mostly the base of both of these is in India. And we will see how these two groups end up in India as well. From where? Because they come from very different paths. So, first of all, the Ismailis, yeah, who, as a whole, we are not now distinguishing between different branches, who also sometimes are known as the Seveners, yeah, seven, people's followers of the seven. Normally, you would think it's seven Imams, but the Ismailis do not regard Imam Ali as just an Imam. So they do not count him as Imam. They regard him as a wasi of the Prophet, full stop. So it's higher than Imam. They start from Imam Hassan as one and then down. And the seventh one is Ismail, who is the son of Imam Jafar Sadiq, alayhi salam. And then his son, Muhammad, who probably is still considered to be the awaited Mahdi in Ismaili theology. Okay, so what happened is this, that up to the imamat of Imam Jafar Sadiq, they are following the same line as the Isnashri line of the Imams. And we know from history, and we don't have time to really go into the theological controversy on this, but I'll just narrate you the event, that the eldest son of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam was called Ismail. And during the lifetime of Imam Jafar Sadiq, he also had a son called Muhammad. But Ismail died during the lifetime of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Now, the question is, had the Imam appointed him as his successor and then, because he died, appointed somebody else? And could he do that or not? So there's a lot of theology involved there. So the Ishnashiris, they believe that no, the appointed successor was Musa Kazim, who was the younger brother of Ismail. Okay? From another half-brother, actually, from another wife of the Imam. The Ismailis believe that no, Ismail was appointed, and because he died in the lifespan of the Imam, then his son Muhammad became the successor. And so they traced their line from there. So now, what is not clear, and this is something which is a little bit intriguing, is that what happened to Muhammad? There's very little record of what happened to him. And until a few years later, some followers emerge, mainly in the beginning in Iran, in Dailam and in Khuzestan in Iran, claiming that we are the authorized. Now, in Ismaili theology, you will see a constant, if you like, flux between Da'i and Imam. So, Da'i is more a person who makes dawah or who spreads the message. And of course, lately they have come to the concept of Da'i Mutlaq, which means that you are a complete authority. Just like Wilayat Faqih Mutlaq, which was pronounced in Iran some years ago. sometimes the person who is claiming has claimed himself to be the Imam or the Qaim itself. And then when things don't go as they should have gone during the reign of the Qaim, then another Dai comes. And then we back to Imam, and sometimes the representative of the Imam and so on. But generally speaking, there is a continuous, if you like, succession of either secret followers, secret leaders, or people who claim themselves to be Qaims or Dais or whatever and whatever, right? So here, after the Imam Jafar Sadiq, after a few years, in fact after 100 years nearly, somebody emerges and said that, look, I am the secret Dai, and we are proclaiming the imamat of Ismail and Muhammad, and we are saying that Muhammad, the son of Ismail, has gone into Gaiba and will return towards the end of time. So bringing close to Islamic theology in the sense. In fact, the name of that son of Ismail, Muhammad, is exactly the name of the Prophet. It says Abul Qasim Muhammad. So they say, it is said that there will be another Muhammad, parallel to Muhammad coming, so this is the one. Clearly, because of the repression and so on, not much happens for quite a period of time. And then they have small cells in Iraq and parts of Iran, and then some in Yemen. In fact, actually, Saudi Arabia and Yemen together there, but very small, and also quite secretive because obviously the circumstances were not right. But then we have, Irfan, can we have this first slide, please? Then we have something strange happening. We have a person who comes and appears in what is today called Tunisia, right? Which is after Egypt, and claims to be the Qaim of the Ismailis. So he appears amongst the Berber people in Tunisia, Algeria, what is today between Tunisia and Algeria, and claims to be the Qaim and starts spreading the message. And this is what we will call the beginning of the Fatimid dynasty. The Fatimid dynasty starts from there, and it spreads, and you can see from the map that it's the shaded line, it spreads right up to Morocco. Not after Morocco, the north is the Umayyads, who are in south of Spain, but also takes Sicily and Malta. And on the other side, it goes into parts of Saudi Arabia today, and Damascus, Jerusalem, and so on. So eventually from there, when they expand, they come and settle down or establish their base in Cairo. In fact, Cairo at that time was not a city. Near Cairo, there was an old Cairo which was called Fustat. Okay, that was the city. But these people established Cairo. The name Cairo comes from Kahira, which means the city of victory. Victory. And so Cairo became the headquarters of the Fatimid caliphs. And also, they established the Azhar University and two other things during that time, which are interesting. As we will see, these are important markers for us. One is, those of you who have been to Cairo, you see that there is in Cairo this Khan Khalili, which is the old quarter of Cairo, and in there is Masjid al-Hussein. They say, Fatimids especially say it, that actually the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not buried in Karbala because it was carried on the spears to Damascus and then later. So it was buried in somewhere in Syria, and then it was dug up and buried back in Cairo. So this is the significance of Masjid al-Hussein. There are also reports that one of the possible places of burial of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam is Cairo. It's not Damascus. And it's difficult to sift through these reports. I have once, I think, done a lecture on this as to what. But this is clearly a Fatimid influence there, because they are closest to this. And so they have, and up to today, you will see that in Cairo, the Masjid al-Hussein is very revered. It's nothing, there are all kinds of local people going there, and you can see that even before weddings and so on, people come and make appearance before the Zari and then go and have their wedding or whatever it is. So yes, Cairo became the center, and this people spread. Now this is also at the same time as the Abbasids were in power in other parts of on the other side, as you can see, in Baghdad and on. So the origin of this is North Africa, Egypt in particular. It's not anywhere in the east or west. This was one branch of the Ismailis and Fatimis. There was another branch which was in Iraq and Yemen, and not the one which is there existing, but those were called the Karamatas, I think. And these were also very strict followers, but they really have a very mixed history, I must say. Because they were Bedouin tribes, their main job, their main livelihood was actually raiding caravans going for Hajj and looting them. This was their main, if you like, what they claimed to be followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam as well. And it's said that once, and not said, it is true, that once they actually managed to enter Makkah and sacked it, and also took the Hajar al-Aswad with them and went away with it. It was 21 years before the Caliph was able to negotiate a settlement with them to bring it back. And at that time, they are said to have killed 25,000 people in the Haram in Makkah. Okay? So we have the dark side of that history as well, which we should keep in mind. But eventually, and certainly at the present time, there is no presence, there is no sign of these people in that area. But they were claiming to be following the line of Ismail as well. Okay. Now, as far as these people were concerned, they were, of course, one Caliph after the other. And there came a time where there arose a dispute on succession at the time of one of the caliphs. If I am not mistaken, let me just get my facts right. So it was the death of the 18th Imam, I think, in Cairo, where he had two sons, one called Nizar and one called Musta'li. So both, of course, claimed the Khilafat. These things happen in this kind of situations, as we have seen in other situations as well. So eventually the Musta'li branch, they prevailed and the Nizari branch. Nizar was killed, and then his followers were also expelled. Okay? And then we will see what happened to the Mustali branch a bit later on. But the Nizaris were out from Egypt and the Fatimid rule. Now it's very interesting what happens to the Nizaris. In very short time, they emerge in Iran, in Alamut, under a leader called Hassan al-Sabah. The people from Iran in the audience will know Hassan al-Sabah very well. And Hassan al-Sabah claimed to be the new Dai of the Nizari branch. And obviously, still the Abbasids were there, so it was very difficult operating conditions. But Hassan al-Sabah is said to have designed a strategy of protecting his followers, which is very, very interesting but scary as well. They Hassan al-Sabah clearly understood. In Alamut, of course, they based themselves in the fort of Alamut, which was a very strong fort. But he understood that his followers were no match for the big armies of the caliphs or all kinds of other people who wanted to attack them. So he decided to adopt a strategy of what is called selective assassination of opponents. And of course, those of you who know some history in this area will know that the term Hashashin, from which the term assassin comes. The English and the French term assassin comes from Hashashin. So it is said that, obviously, now there are other complications here as to how this has become a little bit more muddied, because at that time also the Crusaders came in, and in order to protect his followers from the Crusaders, because as we saw, the Crusaders also relied on pillaging the people in the areas they proceeded through. Hassan al-Sabah was able to encourage his followers, some of them, to assassinate some key crusaders as well and put the fear of God into them. So they did not touch his followers after that. The crusaders, of course, wanted to portray them as crazy people. So they said these are people who have got this idea of who is in heaven and they are ready to die, exactly what we see today. So, and they started to make this propaganda, and they said that, look, these people could not do this kind of killing because if they are saints, so they must be drugged. So they put this idea that they were given hashish so that they were completely high on drugs before they were sent to do what they needed to do. And obviously they wanted to portray that the Muslims were really not nice people and the Crusaders were doing a favor by attacking them and so on, exactly as the colonial powers and all the others have done since. Okay, so this Hashashin idea was, of course, blown out of proportion, but he was very, very intelligent, very strategically putting the fear into his enemies so that he was protected there in Alamut. And the people who actually did the assassinations were called Fidai, or in, I think, in Iran, even recently as 50 years ago, we still had some Fidayan Islam to do this kind of thing. I mean, this is like assassination in broad daylight, and very clear, clean, and say, okay, this is what you want, we are ready to do it more and more. So it's very well planned and executed. So for example, one of the Seljuk rulers who was really trying to restrict them, So what they did, they sent one of these people to assassinate him, but not to actually assassinate. What he did, he went to his place, and when the man got up in the morning, he saw a big dagger next to his bed. And then they sent him a message next day that, look, do you want this dagger to go into you? If not, just back off, yeah? Leave us alone. And so it was a calculated reign of terror, but with a very clear survival strategy. I don't know how religion interacts with that or not. That's something which is different. Eventually, these people established a little bit more following and for quite some time stayed in Iran. Ultimately, they fell out with Nader Shah and were expelled. So this is where we have one of their subsequent imams called Aga Khan Mahallati come to Afghanistan and then India and established the Ismaili Khoja branch in India. And then you have Aga Khan 1, 2, 3, and now we have Aga Khan 4, who are sort of from this Indian side of the Ismailis. There are a few Aga Khani Ismailis in Tajikistan and a few in some of the Central Asian republics, but otherwise it's India and then from India to here and everywhere else. In the middle, they have got this idea of the Hazir Imam or the present Imam. So it's very unclear whether this is supposed to be the Mahdi or a representative of the Mahdi. Because it seems that the Imam has got the power to completely change the Sharia. So for example, at the moment they are not required to pray or fast or do anything. I mean, we had a very strange encounter here in the Ismaili Center. We went once they had invited people to the Prophet's birthday. And some of the people there who didn't know them, they said, okay, can you show us the mosque or the prayer area? And they said, we don't have one. I said, what do you mean you don't have one? So they took us upstairs where they have, where they do their prayers, but not salat. Yes, they sit and do. So it's not marked Qibla or nothing is marked. And some of the Muslims were quite shocked to say, this is quite strange for them. But I believe that some of them do actually pray and fast in Pakistan and India and so on. But generally, as far as the Imam is concerned, this is not required. And obviously now the fourth Aga Khan is based in Geneva. Although he has, as far as I know, a Pakistani and Iranian diplomatic passport. So there are still links with those places where they have. So that's the Nizari branch, going through Alamut and all that, the Hashashin or assassins, and back into India and where we are now. The Musta'ali branch continued for some time, and then they had another split. Now, this was at the death of the 12th Imam, Al-Amir bin Ahkam, also in Cairo, who was said to have a son called Tayyib al-Qasim. But at the time of the death of his father, he was only 2 years old. So one branch said, this is the Imam, and we should follow him, and then obviously continues from there. So there will be Tayyibis. The other branch said, no, there is another, I think, relative called Al-Hafiz. So they are called Hafizi Ismailis. They continue as well in some parts of the world today. Eventually, the Fatimis there started to have a little bit of infighting and so on. Because obviously, even as Tayyib was appointed as the Imam, there were other people performing the function. This is a 2-year-old, so it's only an expectation of taking over. And Salahuddin Ayyubi was able to take over and finish the the Fatimid Khilafat. In fact, when he took over Cairo, he prayed the Jummah in the name of the Abbasid Khilafat, of the Caliph, so that was finished. And these people were out, exiled, landing in Yemen for quite a long time. So they started to be based in Yemen and went through a number of dais and imams. As I said, it's not very clear the distinction between dais and imams and qaims and so on. It sort of fluctuates from time to time, depending on the expectation. And then these imams in Yemen also, situation started to become difficult as the Ottomans gained power, the Abbasid pressure, and so on before that. And one branch was asked to go to India, and so based themselves first in Ahmedabad, I think, then in Jamnagar, and then finally in Mumbai today, which is where the seat of this what are called Dawoodi Bohras. Yeah. So there were two factions in Yemen. One was Soleimani and one was Dawoodi. So Dawoodis are the majority, and they are the one who ended up in India. So the Ismailis came through Iran, the Aga Khanis. These Dawoodis came through Yemen into India. Yeah. So the two branches are quite different, right? This, because of the Yemen origin, and really in terms of practice, very strict practice of the basic Islamic tenets in terms of prayers and fasting and so on. There is no question about that. There may be small variations, but there is no question. They have this very interesting thinking that even against what the Khoja Ishnashiris have done in India, and that is the understanding of whether you can use the Sanskrit script. So the script, they say, because the Hinduism is polytheistic, the script is also shirk. So we cannot use that script to write anything. And therefore, they actually write Gujarati in Arabic and Farsi script. So if you read it, you can read, it reads Gujarati, but it's written in the Arabic and Farsi script because they consider that to be pure. Whereas the Ishnashiris, they have translated lots of stuff into Gujarati, into Sanskrit script. In fact, translated the Quran and developed a special diacritical format to allow people to read the Quran in Gujarati with the right intonation and so on. So it's two different interpretations of that. And they developed a very strong organization as well in terms of how to preserve the community structure. And they have very strict codes and serious powers of excommunication. If you're excommunicated, you're dead, because your marriage, inheritance, all kinds of things fall into problems, right? It's only people who don't care, obviously, they are there, but generally it keeps the whole congregation together, organized, and doing whatever is needed to be done. They are now known as Bohras. The term Bohra means traders. So it comes from traders. They are not like, this is not an Islamic term in any sense. It's because in the Gujarat, traders were known as Bohras. So these people are also known as Bohras. And there could be others, but generally they have, if you like, colonized the term Bohra, right? Or is normally they are normally referred to as Bohris. Okay, so this is how the two branches come, yeah? And there is nothing left now of that Fatimid presence in North Africa, where it originated and where it had a long reach. But we will see there was some benefit to that, which I'm coming to. This is the last point. Before that, just to point, and this has featured in Shia discourse in different forms in different communities, and that is whether there is an apparent meaning or zahir and a hidden meaning to the Quran, to all kinds of other knowledge. So it's zahiri and batini. And we have this, for example, many people, especially when we were young, less so now, used to say that actually we have a additional portion of the Quran which only known to Imam Ali alayhi salam, which actually spells out the succession and all kinds of other things. So really, if we were given the chance, we could have. It would be in the Quran. Or that the hidden knowledge of the Quran and Hadith is only with Imam Ali and his successors and so on. And only the chosen people, they know this. And so on and so forth. So there is a, if you like, Batini discourse across different parts of the Shia world. But the Ismailis take it right to the top. They said that this Batini or inside knowledge is only known to a small few select people, and it's unknowable by others, except if they decide to give it, right? So it's very difficult to find the actual theology and what is happening and what is not happening here. This could be linked to one other philosophical development, that early on, the Ismailis developed quite a expertise in Aristotelian logic, the ideas of Plato, and so on. So, for example, somebody like Nasiruddin Tusi was an Ismaili, right? And Ibn Sina was an Ismaili, and so on. So they were quite leading theologians and scientists as well. And in Greek and Roman theology and philosophy, there is this idea of what we would call the nobles and the plebs. The nobles have all the rights, including voting rights and so on. Plebs have very little. So it's like, if you take this into this kind of format, you say those, so we have in Arabic and Farsi also, and especially in mystical circles, we have this idea of the khawas and the awam, the chosen ones and the ordinary people. So you say, unless you are part of the chosen one, we cannot really impart this knowledge to you. So it's not uncommon, but the Ismailis take it to extreme. They say this is absolute. The Batini side is predominant and only known to a few people. You just got to follow it. And that is what it is. Okay? So, in sum, they started off in North Africa, but after the movement of history, they have now been concentrated in India and parts of Yemen. But recently, lots of their documents and historic documents have been worked on, and there is much more information available than before. So things like this, Hassashin and all these things have been discredited as Crusader propaganda and so on. So now what was the main, in my view, benefit of this? If you look at the map here again, and you take your mind back to just after Karbala. So what happened to the Umayyads after Karbala? As soon as they started to be challenged, they went across. And they went across North Africa into Andalusia. Right? This is how they went, yeah? the whole thing became Umayyad, not this map, but before this, okay? And they were still there in Spain when the Fatimids were coming. Now, if you are going there, spreading Islam after Karbala, what kind of information will you be giving about the followers of Ahlul Bayt, whom you have massacred? You wouldn't say that we were wrong, yeah? You try to find ways to say that these guys were really not good, they were not good Muslims, they were doing this and that. So across there, they spread all kinds of really serious propaganda against the Ahlul Bayt. And I was really not aware of these things until about 25, I think 30 years ago now. I was listening to a lecture in a meeting we had in Malaysia. It was nothing to do with religion, but there was this lady. Some of you may have read his works or heard about her. Her name is Fatima Marnisi. She's a feminist author. She was talking about the character of Hazrat Zainab and Sakina bint al-Hussein and so on, as portraying them basically as loose women, dancers and singers and so on. So I said to her, I was a young person, of course, 30 years ago, half my age. So I got quite angry, and I got up and I said, look, Fatima, you are a sociologist, but unfortunately you're not using your knowledge. Sitting in Morocco, you are using sources, and there is one particular source, which I still want Mikdad to translate for me, Kitab al-Aghani of Abul Faraj Isfahani, okay? From which she was quoting a lot of... later on, I asked Sayyid Fadl Milani, Ayatollah Sayyid Fadl Milani, about this person, Abul Faraj Isfahani. So he said, this is a typical Umayyi Shi'i. Anyway, so I said, Fatima, look, these things are coming from people who want to perpetrate this narrative, because otherwise they cannot say why they have done what they have done in Karbala, and you cannot accept this. So it became clear from there that the whole of North Africa was poisoned with this narrative. So the coming of the Fatimids, and this is important, when it started in Tunisia, or between Algeria and Tunisia, it started amongst the Berbers. The Berbers are mostly in the south of those countries. The Arabs are in the north. And the Berbers regard themselves as a different kind of people. And the Berbers, the preaching amongst the Berbers was that this narrative against the Ahlul Bayt is wrong. So if nothing, the Fatimids helped to clean that narrative from North Africa. Now we have a Berber friend, and he said that in a Berber family, it is not possible to have a daughter and not call her Fatima, the first one. So it's become like, first port of call, if you like. So I think the main contribution of the Fatimids in that side was to clean that poison of the Umayyads and leave it to fester there. Okay, we'll end there, and Salaam Alaikum.
We have some time for questions from either side, from the sister side, anyone?
Very enlightening lecture, and thank you for all the 4 lectures, Iqbal Bhai. Can I just ask that map, who were the Rustamids?
So these were, different kinds of, if you like, sub-leaders which strung up, yeah? Local leaders. They're not like, it's not like the Abbasids and the Fatimids.
Yeah, that's what.
Those are the overarching, but in between. So what the Fatimids were very clever in doing is that playing one against the other, and getting ground, or negotiating with one and getting ground.
But were they very successful? The Fatimids, were they successful in
Absolutely successful. When they were at the height of their power in Cairo, they were really, really powerful. And the sponsorship of scholarship and science and technology and things was very, it was matching Abbasid, so the Baghdad of that time, right? Yes, they were. But then obviously all these things, when internal divisions come, then you have a weakness which then allows the enemy to take over, right?
And one more thing, I also went to the Ismaili Center, and the area where they pray is called the Jamaat Khana.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
They don't call it a mosque.
No, in his desks, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's exactly the same experience. I said, where's the mosque? That's when I learned that it was called the Jamaat Khana. And
Because
they-
you see, as a Bohra yourself, you will not find any of your Jamaat Khanas without a mosque.
Exactly.
This is central and fundamental.
Exactly.
Any other questions from the lady side?
I was wondering, where do Sufis fit into this? Do they fit into this at all? In India and everything?
Yeah, we said in the first session that Sufis like overarch. So all of them can be, parts of them can be Sufis, right? So parts of those who are more mystically inclined in any group can be Sufis, including amongst the Sunnis, Shias, and so on. What is a common characteristic of the Sufis is that because they have a chain of awliya, right? The chain, 99% of the Sufi orders start with Imam Ali alayhi salam. So they all trace them back to Imam Ali. So Sufis, in a sense, are counterweight to Salafism and things like that, which because they will correct that kind of vilification of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But otherwise, no, it's not specific to any one group.
Any other questions?
So Iqbal, what about the numbers today? Ismaili community and the Bohra community.
The Aghani community will be about 20 million, especially because of the followers in Central Asia. The Dawoodi Bohras, I think, between 1 and 1.5 million. The other Fatimis, about 1 million in Yemen. So, not very big now compared to what they had, but stable now.
Maybe we missed out, Brother Iqbal, on the Fatimis, the naming of Fatimis. As we know, all Shias followers of Imam Ali, and you're saying Fatima. So what is the difference in this? We talked about this.
I don't, as I said in the beginning before you came actually, I don't think there is a difference. It's just an extra emphasis on the line of Fatima. Because, as you know, that some of the people who have claimed have been from Imam Ali's side, but not from Fatima's side. So these people are saying, no, if he is not from that side, that is out altogether. Having said that, there is a lot of dispute about the lineage of some of the early Imams, and there is still not enough research whether they actually had a link to the lineage or not. Yeah, but that's an open question. But yeah, there's no difference in that sense. It's just an overemphasis.
And the Ismailis and the Bohras, they don't tend to be in Arabs or not? I mean, there is not in mostly Asians.
So it's not Ismailis, it's the Agha Khanis, right? Because both are Ismailis. As I said, the Agha Khanis came through Iran and then into India. And so they have adopted the Indian language. Very few of them speak Persian now. The Bohras came through Yemen, and so most of their religious teaching is still in Arabic. And as I said, even their writing is in Arabic script. So there is much more Arabic influence that side than the other side. Yes.
Final question from the lady side.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum, Iqbal bhai. Thank you very much for such an enlightening and knowledgeable lessons on history of Islam. What amazed me, what we have learnt in the history, according to us, is the Dawoodi Bohras and the Aga Khanis, Khoja, were together up till 18 Imams.
Yeah.
So if that's so, why there's so much of difference, not even in the basic principle of Islam within the Aga Khani community? They are so different. If you are following that path of, so what was the, I know you explained some of it, but I still can't understand why there's so much of difference.
So, as I said, from the time of the split, the Nizaris went towards Iran. Yeah, and they were much more persecuted. So Hassan al-Sabah and his people were very secretive, and so the Batini aspects took over. Some of the leaders or caliphs or qaims which they had, they said, now I am the Mahdi, so there is no need for the Sharia. So they relaxed it. On the other side, on the Musta'ali side and then the Dawoodi side, the Sharia has always been the central tenet. So practice, nobody can dare to say that you don't need to pray. They'll be out of business, right? But on that side, they have reached that. It's just like, as we said about the Alawis in Turkey, right? Their belief is complete, but practice is, in fact, they don't have mosques or anything. And so sometimes this happens as well. We don't know why it happens. Sometimes you can understand that you can be oppressed and you don't show what you are doing. That's fine, but then it should come back, but it hasn't come back and maybe it has stayed.